I'll be going back to my parents' house for 3 days. I announced this and began packing my things.
Yes, finally the nuisance is gone.
Emily clapped her hands in joy and high-fived Mike.
Don't bother coming back.
Even when Mike said that, I didn't feel sad. If anything, I felt relieved. Goodbye. We'll never see each other again, but don't think this is the end.
What do you think you can even do?
Don't worry. All she can do is clean, do laundry, and cook. And don't even think about crying and coming back here. We won't let you in.
We'll see who ends up crying. I'm looking forward to it. I'm Laura, a 48-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband, Mike, who is 4 years older than me, for 18 years. This was my first marriage, but for Mike, it was his second. His daughter, Emily, who was just 2 years old at the time, is turning 20 this year. My parents and sister were worried about how challenging life might be and weren't thrilled about this marriage, but I pushed through, determined that I would be happy. Feeling sorry for Emily, who had to part from her biological mother at such a young age, I poured all my love into her. Emily responded by growing close to me, and we became like real mother and daughter. Those were happy days. I believed that happiness would last forever, but I soon learned just how fragile and easily shattered it could be. Emily, who had been such a sweet child, began distancing herself from me when she reached the upper grades of elementary school. Even at home, she barely spoke to me. She seemed to have fun talking with Mike, so I figured it was just a phase, a typical teenage rebellion where daughters find something off-putting about their moms. At first, I didn't think much of it, but Emily's attitude worsened by the day, and by the time she started middle school, she only spoke to me when she needed something. She ignored almost all of my attempts to talk to her. I was stunned by how much she had changed and spent my days in disbelief. I couldn't think of anything I might have done wrong. Did I unknowingly hurt her somehow? Even when I wanted to ask, I hesitated because Emily avoided even looking at me. Mike, you've noticed that Emily hasn't talked to me in ages, right? Her attitude is getting worse, too. Have you heard anything?
Nope. It's probably just a phase.
As expected, Mike brushed me off. Well, I hope that's all it is. I can't help wondering if I did something without realizing it.
You're not her real mom, so you're bound to notice every little thing. She's just going through a phase.
Mike's response always seemed a little off to me. Looking back, I think Mike was selfish and irresponsible. I now believe he just wanted someone to take care of Emily when she was little. What he really needed was a nanny who doubled as a housekeeper. He hid his true nature and aggressively pursued me to fulfill that role. I discovered Mike's true colors soon after we got married. By then, Emily was attached to me, and I had grown to love her, so leaving wasn't an option. I couldn't bear the thought of Emily losing a mother figure for the second time, so I put up with Mike's selfish and reckless behavior for her sake. It's true that I'm not her biological mother, but I've dedicated my life in my 30s to being a real mother to her. Hearing Mike say that was unbearable. There's no point in talking to him about it, and I can't turn to my parents or sister either. I endured those painful days alone. To Emily, I'm not even a person, let alone a mother. Even after she passed through her rebellious teenage years in high school, her attitude towards me didn't change. Now, Emily is 20. She graduated from high school, got a job in the fashion industry, and seems to be working diligently. As for me, she's still in her rebellious phase. I can't even remember the last time we had a proper conversation.
I won't need dinner tonight.
Mike said this in the morning while getting ready for work. We still have the bare minimum of communication.
I'm meeting out with Emily.
Okay, got it. I'm never invited to these occasional meals out. At first, I felt lonely, but now I don't feel anything. If anything, I'm grateful for a peaceful dinner alone. No need to stress over meal planning. After seeing Mike off, I left for my part-time job. On the way home, I stopped by the local market and picked up dinner at my favorite deli. Tonight, it's just me. No need to go all out with cooking. After a relaxing soak in the bath, I finished dinner and looked at the clock. It was only 6:30 p.m. Delighted by the rare chance for a quiet evening, I grabbed a novel I hadn't touched in ages and a cup of coffee, then settled on the sofa. When was the last time I spent a night like this? Since getting married, I had been busy with household chores and raising Emily. After she started middle school, I began working a part-time job as well, leaving me with little time and keeping me away from my love of reading. The moment I settled in and comfortably opened the book, my phone rang. It was Mike's father, Richard. This was the first time Richard had ever called me directly. What could this be about? Feeling a sense of unease, I answered the phone.
Mary has collapsed.
According to Richard, Mike's mother, Mary, had collapsed and was taken to the hospital. He had tried calling Mike but couldn't reach him, so he called me instead. I'll try calling him too. Her condition wasn't serious, and she was stable now, so there didn't seem to be an urgent need to rush, but Richard was probably feeling anxious being alone. Since their home wasn't far, he wanted Mike, as the eldest son, to come over as soon as possible. Imagining how worried Richard must be, I couldn't sit still and immediately called Mike. The phone rang and rang, but when it finally connected, it went straight to voicemail. This is Laura. I heard Mary has collapsed. It doesn't sound serious, but Richard would like you to call him. I left a message for the time being and kept calling afterward. However, Mike didn't pick up at all. I tried calling Emily, who was likely with him just in case, but she didn't answer either. Why aren't they answering? Did they plan this together or something? I couldn't just leave things as they were. Richard's anxious voice kept echoing in my mind. I wanted to ease his worries as soon as possible. I had a good guess about where they might be eating. Grabbing my phone and wallet, I hopped on my bike to look for them. They weren't at the first place I checked, a burger joint, nor were they at the second, a pizza place. The only other option I could think of was the steakhouse. For Emily's birthdays, graduations, and other special occasions, we always went for steak. Would today be a special occasion? I racked my brain but couldn't come up with anything. Still, I decided to head to the steakhouse for now. It wasn't far from the burger joint, one of our favorite steakhouses. I must have been pedaling faster than I realized because, despite it being winter, I was sweating. I parked my bike and peered inside through the steakhouse's large glass windows. There they were. It seemed Emily was returning from the restroom, walking through the restaurant. I walked in, spotted her, and headed toward the table where she sat. What? I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. Alongside Mike and Emily, there was a woman around my age.
What are you doing here?
Noticing me, Mike looked a bit flustered and put down his fork.
You followed us? Gross.
Emily muttered dismissively, continuing to grill her steak. That's not it. I got a call from your grandpa. As I explained Richard's call, I found myself oddly pleased to be talking to Emily again, even if only briefly. I was ashamed to feel that way. Try to visit him soon and put his mind at ease.
Yeah, got it. Now go home.
I hadn't come here because I wanted to. I wanted to leave, but not before understanding what this situation was. Well, who is this? I gestured toward the unfamiliar woman, prompting Mike to introduce her.
My mom.
Emily was the one who answered.
She's my real mom. So yeah, you're in the way. Get out.
What? Mike smirked. A moment ago, he was flustered, but now, encouraged by Emily's words, he had clearly decided to brazen it out. The woman didn't even glance at me. She leaned her elbows on the table, staring silently at the wall, one hand holding Mike's. I felt sick. So, this is Mike's ex-wife, the woman who gave birth to Emily. Looking closely, I could see the resemblance to Emily. I had always thought Emily didn't look much like Mike. When did the three of you start meeting?
Before Emily started middle school, maybe? She's her real mom, so of course they'd meet.
You didn't have to hide it from me.
Why would I need to tell you? Would it have changed anything if I did?
Now I finally understood why Emily's attitude had suddenly shifted before starting middle school. She had been meeting her biological mother. It would have changed everything. I could have lived my life differently. Why didn't I choose to leave back then? There was no point in regretting it now, but I couldn't help myself.
That doesn't matter. We're celebrating Mom's birthday, so just leave already.
Emily told me to leave again, snapping me back to reality. The situation was painfully clear. Fine, just make sure to call Richard. That was all I said before walking out of the restaurant. My mind was a mess. It felt strange that even with my heart in pieces, my body kept breathing and walking. I tried to tell myself it wasn't that big of a deal, but it didn't ease the pain even a little. I got on my bike and pedaled hard. As soon as I felt the cold wind on my face, tears began to flow. After 18 years of devoting myself to Mike and Emily, this was how it ended. So cruelly. I want to go back. If I could return to 18 years ago, I would stop myself from choosing this path with all my strength. But I couldn't turn back time. Overwhelmed with anger, sadness, and emptiness, my heart felt like it was about to burst, and I cried out loud. I didn't care if people on the street stopped to stare. I cried all the way home. I parked my bike and looked up at the house where I had lived for 18 years. The house my parents built for me. Although they were hesitant at first, they built it out of their wish for my happiness. Is this really my home? Feeling an odd sense of detachment, I opened the front door and was greeted by the faint aroma of coffee. I felt my tension release as I sat down on the sofa. I gulped down the cold coffee, and the tangled mess in my heart seemed to settle, dropping like a heavy stone. I slowly exhaled. It's okay, I can handle this. Just then, I heard a noise at the front door. They must have come back.
That was so good. Let's go again with Mom next time.
Next time, it'll be the four of us. You'll introduce Ryan to her before the wedding, right?
She was so thrilled when I said he's the son of a CO. I can't wait to introduce them.
The two of them chatted away as if I didn't exist. So, Emily is engaged to the son of a company president. I hadn't known a thing. I'd always been an outsider in this house. If that's the case, there's no reason for me to stay. I'll be going back to my parents' house for 3 days. I announced this and began packing my things.
Yes. Finally, the nuisance is gone.
Emily clapped her hands in joy and high-fived Mike.
Don't bother coming back.
For the first time in a long while, I saw Emily and Mike smiling. Their smiles were so ugly that I immediately averted my eyes and continued packing. Mike had told me never to come back, but I didn't feel sad. If anything, I felt relieved. I placed the divorce papers on the table, something I had prepared a long time ago, thinking I might need them someday. My part was already filled out.
Dad, it's divorce papers. That's great. Now you can marry Mom again.
I didn't miss the moment Mike froze when he saw the divorce papers. He must have thought I'd come running back soon enough. He had told me to never come back without even preparing himself for the possibility that I might not. That's how he's always been. Mike doesn't think deeply about anything. Marriage, divorce, major life decisions, they're all impulsive to him.
So you were planning to leave too, right? Well, that works out perfectly.
Mike is easily swayed.
That's awesome. Dad, just sign it already.
Urged on by Emily's words, Mike easily signed the divorce papers and tossed them at my feet. I picked them up and grabbed my suitcase. It struck me as funny how little I had to pack. It made me realize how little I had spent on myself all these years. Goodbye. We'll never see each other again, but don't think this is the end. My cold words, so out of character, seemed to make Mike flinch for a moment.
What do you think you can even do?
Don't worry. All she can do is clean, do laundry, and cook. And don't even think about crying and coming back here. We won't let you in.
Cleaning, laundry, and cooking. They'll soon learn how hard that really is. Whatever happens to those two is none of my concern. We'll see who ends up crying. I'm looking forward to it. I didn't feel even the slightest regret. I put the divorce papers into my bag and walked out of the house. Heading to the station, I made my way to my parents' home 2 stops away. The wind, which had felt cold and sorrowful earlier, now felt refreshing. The fight starts now. I won't just cry and accept this. For the 18 years I gave, I'll make sure I win. I walked along the nighttime streets, firm in my resolve. The train was crowded, and as I watched all the people, I found myself idly thinking about how everyone has their own life to live. Surely, there must be others going through something similar to me. 2 stops passed in no time. Even though I returned home unannounced, my parents welcomed me without surprise. I didn't want to sadden them, but I also didn't want to hide the truth and make them worry more. I'm sorry things turned out like this after I said I'd be happy. Can I stay here for a while?
Don't say just for a while. You can stay as long as you want. We'd be glad to have you, right, Dad?
Mom said, her eyes glistening with tears while turning to Dad. Without a word, he nodded, but his expression showed a deep sadness, and it made my chest ache. For 18 years, their daughter had been suffering. How could they not feel heartbroken? They must have regretted not stopping me more firmly back then. I had caused them pain and regret, but I was glad I had spoken honestly. Surrounded by their kindness, I felt truly at ease for the first time in a long while. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in years. When I woke up and looked at the clock, it was past 8 a.m., and I jumped out of bed in a panic. Although it was my day off from work, I still had a lot to do. It was the morning of my new beginning. After getting ready and leaving my parents' house, I spent the day busy running around to the bank, real estate office, and other places. It was tiring, but dedicating time to myself felt fulfilling. When I returned home exhausted, Mom's dinner was waiting for me. Even after years of being a housewife, I could never match Mom's cooking.
I don't do anything special, really.
Mom said with a happy smile. Just then, I heard footsteps coming from the front door. I could tell just by the sound. Those bold, determined steps were probably my sister Susan's. When the door opened, it was indeed Susan standing there. I couldn't help but laugh.
So, you made it back in one piece.
Susan, that's enough.
Mom quickly tried to stop her, but Susan didn't care. There was warmth in her bluntness. Yes, I made it back in one piece. I smiled as I replied, and Mom sighed, standing up from her chair.
Honestly, you too.
Grumbling, she went to make coffee for Susan. Susan, who lives near my parents, is a lawyer. She had been a stay-at-home mom after getting married, but after divorcing her husband over his infidelity, she returned to her career. While working, she single-handedly raised her daughter, who got married 2 years ago. The next year, Susan became a grandmother, and not long after, she remarried unexpectedly. Even now, she's thriving in her career. She is a true powerhouse.
You look good.
The day I left the house I'd lived in for 18 years, I had called Susan and told her everything. Having gone through her own hardships, Susan cried and raged as she listened to my story. Then she apologized to me.
I'm sorry, I didn't force you to call off the wedding back then.
Though I had made her regret it too, I realized I wasn't alone. Susan was my greatest ally. Thanks to you, I'm doing fine. I don't have time to feel down.
That's the spirit.
Susan's smile was incredibly reassuring. 2 days later, while I was out shopping, my phone rang. It was Mike. I had sent him the paperwork regarding the division of assets the day before yesterday. Maybe it's arrived already. He kept calling repeatedly, so after finishing at the register and leaving the store, I called him back.
What the hell is this?
That was the first thing he said. What do you mean? It's just the breakdown of the assets I'll be taking.
You've got to be kidding me. I'm the one who earned that money. How can someone who just stayed at home have any right to this?
I do. Didn't you know that before signing the divorce papers? That amount is non-negotiable, so please handle it accordingly. I heard him shouting something on the other end, but I hung up without caring. The phone rang again almost immediately, but I ignored it. There was nothing left to discuss.
Hi.
When I returned home, Susan was there. You're here again. Don't you have work to do?
Excuse me. I'm here because I'm worried about my adorable little sister. And you call it Ogden. Of course, I'm working.
Susan settled in and announced she'd stay for dinner too.
It's boring being home alone.
You've got a husband, don't you? Aren't you still newlyweds? Won't he miss you if you don't go back?
He probably assumes I'm out late for work. Besides, we're past the age for that kind of clinginess. I'll help out, so make me something good.
Susan's husband, Kevin, is the CEO of a major corporation. While working as a legal advisor for his company, their relationship blossomed, and they eventually married. He's a busy man, which gives Susan the freedom to do as she pleases. And I've always thought they make a great couple. Until dinner, we spent time in the living room watching TV and relaxing. The time spent together with my family felt nostalgic and soothing. Just as Susan and I started preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. On the monitor, I saw Mike and Emily.
What do you want to do? Should I send them away?
I shook my head and headed for the front door. When I opened it, Mike, looking agitated, immediately began talking.
I didn't want to come all the way here.
Then you shouldn't have.
You weren't answering your phone.
Behind him, Emily stood silently, her face full of irritation. What do you need?
I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a reason.
Well then, come in. I prepared slippers and led them into the living room.
Long time no see. Thanks for coming all this way to bother Laura.
Susan said, glaring at the two. Mike quickly averted his eyes, but Emily glared back and noisily threw herself onto the sofa without being invited. Mike followed suit, sitting down as well.
Just so you know, I'm not offering you drinks or anything. Get to the point and leave. What could you possibly want from Laura at this point?
Well, I think this amount is unreasonable.
Looking visibly pressured by Susan's intensity, Mike placed the document I had sent him outlining the division of assets on the table. I demanded $200,000 from him. Considering it was for 18 years, I thought it was more than fair, perhaps even modest.
It's not unreasonable at all. Laura is entitled to half.
$200,000 isn't half. And what's this about compensation?
Did you forget? Most of the money used to buy that house came from our parents. That entitles Laura to take more.
Mike fell silent.
All this talk about rights is annoying. What's this compensation even for?
Emily, clearly agitated, cut in instead.
Even if she's his ex-wife, entering into a physical relationship makes it infidelity. Don't even try to deny it. The compensation is for that infidelity and the years of emotional distress you two caused.
What? Show me the proof. Without proof, you can't win in court.
Proof? I can gather plenty. Court, don't make me laugh. Feel free to go ahead. I'll be waiting.
As a seasoned attorney, Susan easily outmatched 20-year-old Emily. Emily could only bite her lip in frustration, unable to say anything more.
You know, don't you? Emily is getting married. That's why we need money. There's no way we can pay this amount.
Sensing he was at a disadvantage, Mike softened his tone, practically pleading. It seemed he had no pride at all.
Come on, Laura. I'm begging you. You're her mother, aren't you?
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A mother? Had he ever once treated me like Emily's mother? They met her biological mother in secret, and I wasn't even told about the wedding.
Hey, Emily, ask your mom too.
Yeah, why not cancel the divorce? Come back home, Mom.
That's right. Let's do that. I never wanted a divorce to begin with. I only signed those papers because you forced me to. So, why don't you just come back?
Emily and Mike spoke brightly, as if they had come up with some brilliant idea. Their absurdity made me laugh uncontrollably. Mom, who's that supposed to be? Surely not me. After laughing to my heart's content, I turned to them and said, "Get out. You're in the way." Mike and Emily had no choice but to leave silently. A month passed after that. Mike promised to pay the division of assets right after Emily's wedding. That wedding is today. Of course, I wasn't invited. While enjoying a leisurely day off, I got a call from Susan.
Laura, you have a pearl necklace, right?
Yeah, I do.
Can I borrow it? The clasp on mine is broken.
I could tell from her tone that she was in a hurry. Want me to bring it over?
Please.
I grabbed the necklace and hopped on my bike to Susan's house, just a 5-minute ride away. Kevin, who greeted me at the door, was dressed in a suit. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
I gave him a brief greeting. thinking how demanding his role as a CEO must be, even on weekends. Then I was shown in and headed to Susan's room.
Thank you. You saved me.
Susan, dressed formally, looked stunning. It seemed all she needed now was to put on the necklace. Is it for someone's wedding?
Didn't I mention it's my stepson's wedding?
What? No, you didn't. How could you drop such big news on me now? I didn't even get to congratulate Kevin.
Oops, sorry. Just tell him later for me, okay?
I'm not dressed for this, and I didn't bring a gift. Seriously. I remembered that Kevin had a son he had raised alone after losing his wife early on. A son he raised entirely on his own was now getting married. Kevin must have been deeply moved. It felt a bit unfortunate that the wedding happened to fall on the same day as Emily's, but it wasn't related to Kevin. I offered my congratulations and left Susan's house. For me, it was just another typical day off. I spent the morning relaxing and went shopping in the afternoon. Since moving back to my parents' house, I had taken on the role of cooking dinner. What should I make tonight? My repertoire of fish dishes had grown for the sake of my parents.
Laura, you won't believe this.
While I was preparing dinner, Susan burst in. The wedding must be over already. She's still in her formal dress, so she must have come straight from the venue. What could have happened to make her rush here like this? What's going on?
Don't freak out, okay? Ryan's bride was Emily.
Ryan? Kevin's son?
Yes, that Ryan. And his bride was Emily.
Ryan. Now that I think about it, I might have heard that name when they were talking about the wedding at the steakhouse. Was Emily standing next to Ryan, dressed as a bride?
She was. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but then I saw Mike there, and I was sure of it.
The fact that Emily's groom was Susan's stepson felt like a cruel twist of fate. Susan, didn't you meet her before the wedding?
Kevin did, but I kind of held back. Kevin said she seemed like a cheerful, good kid, but she really played her cards right, didn't she, anyway?
Susan said she had debated whether to tell Kevin about Emily. She couldn't imagine Emily making anyone happy. Letting Ryan walk into a life of misery felt wrong, but ruining the wedding would drag so many people into the fallout. After much deliberation, Susan made her decision. When she told Kevin, he immediately got up and took Ryan outside the venue. After a long time, Kevin returned alone. Ryan wasn't with him. Kevin approached the MC, took the microphone, and announced that the wedding was being called off and the ceremony canceled. Emily's face turned pale in an instant.
Why?
Her voice echoed through the now silent venue. Susan strode confidently into the room.
You know why, don't you?
It seemed that Emily noticed Susan for the first time at that moment.
What? Why are you here? What do you want?
Emily must have thought Susan had come to ruin the wedding out of revenge for me. Given the outcome, that reaction wasn't entirely wrong.
I'm Kevin's wife.
No way.
It seems unbelievable, but it's true. I came to celebrate until I realized you were Ryan's bride.
Emily, her face turning pale, began to understand the situation little by little.
You said something to them, didn't you?
Yes, I did. How could I stand by and let someone I care about marry into a relationship that will only bring misery?
No one enjoys ruining a wedding. For Susan, it was a painful decision. For Kevin and Ryan, it must have been an even harder one.
I can make him happy. Stop assuming things.
Do you have any idea how cruel you were to Laura, who gave you so much love despite not being related by blood?
She's the one who left on her own.
Think about why she left. A daughter who ignored her, a husband meeting his ex-wife in secret. That's the family Laura devoted herself to for years. And you told her she was in the way?
Susan's words stirred murmurs throughout the venue.
Make him happy? You can't. Someone like you doesn't have it in you to make anyone happy.
With that cutting remark, Susan turned away, leaving Emily to burst into tears and cling to Mike's ex-wife.
Mom, say something. That woman, she's Laura's sister. She came here to destroy my wedding. Help me.
Caught off guard by Emily's sudden plea for help, Mike's ex-wife looked confused as Susan directed a sharp, intimidating glare at her.
I'm Laura's sister, and it seems you've played a role in her life. You know, I could file a claim for damages against you. If you don't want that, I suggest you leave now.
Panicked, Mike's ex-wife fled the venue, clearly wanting no part of the situation. In the end, that was the extent of her loyalty. Mike stood there, flustered and completely at a loss.
You told Laura to wait for the payment until the wedding was over, didn't you? Well, it's over now, so pay up. By tomorrow at the latest.
By tomorrow? That's impossible.
Stop making excuses and get it together. Otherwise, I'll get serious about this.
Okay, I understand.
Overwhelmed by Susan's intensity, Mike replied weakly, then pulled Emily to her feet and left the venue under the stunned gaze of the attendees. After hearing Susan's account, I pictured Mike, Emily, and Mike's ex-wife in that scene, and I felt a sense of relief and satisfaction. However, I couldn't help but worry about Ryan, someone I'd never even met. It would likely take him a long time to recover. Do you think Ryan will be okay? Probably not, right?
Well, no, he's understandably shaken, but he'll be fine. He's young, handsome, and successful. He'll have plenty of opportunities ahead.
Though it's undoubtedly painful for Ryan now, I'm convinced that the broken engagement was ultimately for the best. Emily lacks empathy. Building a happy family would likely be a difficult task for her. Kevin seemed to share this view and expressed his gratitude to Susan for having the courage to speak up. Kevin worked hard to raise his son. He must deeply wish for his happiness. And so, the marriage between the two was called off. The next day, I confirmed that the payment had been made as promised and contacted Susan. Thanks for everything. But I wonder how Mike managed to come up with that $200,000.
That's not something you need to worry about, Laura.
In a rush, Mike sold the house, sold his car, and liquidated his savings accounts to gather the cash. Because he was desperate to sell quickly, he was taken advantage of, and the house was sold for less than market value. This was the result of underestimating us and not acting sooner, so it's only fair. After paying my share, Mike was left with almost nothing. Now he and Emily lived together in a small apartment. The other day, Susan and I visited their apartment because we needed Mike's signature on a document. The room was a mess, unclean, with laundry piled up carelessly and instant food containers scattered everywhere. Given that neither of them had ever done much housework, I expected their living conditions to be bad, but it was worse than I imagined. When I saw Mike for the first time in a while, he looked thinner than before. However, not even that stirred any pity in me. After missing her chance to marry, Emily has been attending matchmaking events in a desperate attempt to find another wealthy heir. But she keeps alienating potential matches by bluntly questioning them about their income, their parents' professions, and their job titles. Even so, she continued attending matchmaking events, and just when she thought she had found a promising man, it turned out he was a con artist. Unaware of the truth, Emily fell victim to a marriage scam in the end. Stripped of everything, Emily is now working hard, still clinging to her dream of becoming a CEO's wife.
Maybe it's a long shot, but won't you come back for Emily's sake?
Does he regret throwing me out now, realizing all I could do was clean, do laundry, and cook? Why don't you ask Emily's real mom, your ex-wife? I heard she hasn't been seen since that wedding.
Take care.
With those words from my mom, I stepped out of the house. Thanks to Susan's introduction, I was able to secure a job at my age, and today is my first day. I had considered moving out and living alone, but my parents asked me to stay, and Susan said she felt better knowing I was with them. So I decided to stay and lean on their support a little longer.
If you remarry, you can think about moving out then.
Susan had said with a laugh, but I have no intention of marrying again. That said, I'm looking forward to the life ahead. I want to do all the things I couldn't during those 18 years. But first, when I get my first paycheck, I'm planning to buy something nice for my parents and Susan as a thank you. Having my family by my side gave me strength. How much longer will my parents stay healthy? Susan, too, is at an age where she needs to be mindful of her health. And of course, so am I. That's why I want to live in the moment and cherish every day. No matter what happens, I want us to support each other. Having a true family is a blessing. The sky is clear and cloudless. It feels like it's cheering me on, and that makes me happy. All right, let's do this. With renewed determination, I stepped onto the path to the station.